but I think I was more so shutting myself away from the world because I was getting lonely and tired, maybe a little depressed. So it was, probably not a smart thing. That I probably should have been calling people.
Welcome to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast. Join Military Family Services US as we explore the experiences our Canadian Armed Forces families have while on OUTCAN. Leaving your home to live in another country can be an exciting adventure, but it is also a time filled with unexpected challenges. Get a glimpse into the CAF OUTCAN world with these unique stories of resiliency and courage. Share in their struggles and cheer for their triumphs. Here are the voices of our OUTCAN families. Welcome to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast, where we share the voices of our Canadian Armed Forces families who are currently on or who have been on an Out of Canada or OUTCAN posting. I'm your host for today's podcast, Joanna Church. Today, I have the pleasure of getting to speak with one of the often overlooked family units in military families, the single member. Single members and their extended families can cover a broad range of demographics. We can have a young person just out of high school whose extended family may be parents, siblings, possibly a child, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and maybe even a high school sweetheart. It could be a widowed member with kids, in-laws, parents, or a lifetime bachelor or bachelorette. A single member may be a temporarily single member, not because they don't have a significant other, but because their significant other wasn't able to accompany them to their current posting. So their spouse or partner and kids may be across the country, or in the case of OUTCANs, across the world from their member. Or then, like my guest today, Darlene Skinner, you could be someone who finds themselves single after being married for many years, whose family are her kids and grandchild who are back in Canada, while you're in the United States for an OUTCAN posting during a worldwide pandemic. Darlene was originally brought to my attention when she shared a photo with us this past year for social media, showing some awesome volunteer work that she was doing in her community of Dayton, Ohio. And is that where you're located, Darlene?
I am in Dayton. Well, actually, it's Beaver Creek.
Beaver Creek. So right outside of Dayton. Yeah. And I wanted to take some time to get to know this single woman who has been a member of the Armed Forces for 16 years. Who during a lonely posting to a different country found a way to stay connected with people, give to the people, community, and country that is hosting her, and do it even before the isolation and challenges of the pandemic began. Darlene, welcome to the podcast today, and thank you for your service both in the military but also in the community.
Thanks for having me, Joanna. I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure. So what I think is cool for today's episode is that I am talking to you from your home province of Nova Scotia. You're from Truro originally, and you're talking to me from my home state of Ohio. So yay. I love that for just a little bit today, we get to connect each other to our roots virtually across the miles. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice and sunny here today.
And we've got a little bit of snow on the ground. Well, let's dig in a little to your life as a military member. You were married to a military member as a start to this journey, so you've been a military family member as well as the member yourself. In the last 16 years of service, you've moved 5 times within Canada, and this 6th move was to your Ohio posting, where you have been since July of 2019. So, Darlene, what is your current position within the Canadian Armed Forces?
I work as a foreign liaison officer at the Wright Pat Air Force Base. We liaise with 23 countries, and if I need to do anything for Canada back home, they have questions, I go back and forth. That's how we connect.
Foreign liaison officer. That's exciting in my country.
And
I love it.
I'm the supply side of things too. So yeah, I'm a supply tech as a rule, but I'm here somewhat at a trade if you think about it. But yeah, it's been great.
Wonderful. And out of all these postings in the last 16 years, do you have a favorite posting or a favorite location?
I try to think about that, and I treat them all sort of the same. I try to like everywhere I go. Shiloh, I gotta say, Shiloh, Manitoba was probably one of my favorites. I cried like a baby when I left there. We were
Why?
there.
What did you love
We
about it
we
there?
were there 6 years, and it was just a small based community, so you could reach out to anybody, and that's where we had our first home built. My kids are still there, so it's like once you leave Shiloh you always end up going back, but every other posting was also great for me. Yeah.
That's always something good to find every place you go.
Hmm.
So you joined a little later in life. You were 36 at the time.
I
Now, my
was.
husband was teaching basic training for a few years in St. Jean sur Richelieu recently. And he said that each year he seemed to be seeing more and more 30 and 40-year-olds joining. And he was actually in his early 30s when he joined. So, what made you decide in your 30s that the military just might be a good fit for you? Because listen, that basic training is no joke when you're 20, but mid 30s, wow, that's a tough road.
Well, sort of a funny story. So I was a teacher's assistant for 7 years before I got in the military. And a really good friend of mine, Tammy Air, she's in the military now, she got in. And I thought, if Tammy can do it, I can do it. She doesn't have a physical bone in her body. And I was always active. I played baseball, I played volleyball. I just, so I had somewhat of an active bone in my body. So I thought, why not try it? And one other reason, can't lie, I wanted a house. So off I went at 36 years old to basic training.
And how did you find basic training as a 36-year-old woman?
Well, I worked hard for about a year to get myself there. So my kids, my son, because at first you're like, who can't do sit-ups? Who can't do push-ups? Who can't do this? Well, Darlene Skinner
Me?
couldn't.
Yeah.
Darlene Skinner
Joanna
couldn't
Church
do that.
can't.
So here my son would be up on helping me with sitting on my feet. We were doing the sit-ups, we practicing. So it took me a year to get there. It was still hard for me when we were doing our 5K run. I was still the last in the pack, but I didn't stop. But I found that they did treat me with a little bit more of a respect as I treat the instructors with that. I was older and I listened. I never really had a chip on my shoulder. So that way it was easier. The physical part was still harder. All of it was still harder, but it was an accomplishment to get through it.
And now,
Yeah.
what made you decide to go supply tech?
I gotta throw Tammy out there again. Because I got accepted as a clerk, but as a clerk, you're sitting by the office all day. In supply tech, you can be out running around, or you still have your computer work. So it just fit me better.
You could be active still, but sometimes office, sometimes out.
Yeah, it just worked for me better, and I do
Okay.
enjoy it. Yeah.
What was the hardest thing about making this transition from civilian life into the military life? You were a family member, but that's a little different. So to become the member, what did you find that the most challenging part of that process?
Probably the hardest thing for me was I looked after my family for 14 years. It was hard leaving them. That's what was always important to me, thinking, okay, back at the house, is he going to feed them? Are the bills going to get paid? Or this, you know what? Men do what men have to do. So hats off to them. They can do it when you have to go away,
And that
for
first
sure.
few weeks of basic training, you're not allowed to talk to them.
Yeah,
Can't, yeah. So that must have been really challenging.
yeah, yeah.
That's probably the longest since they were born that you'd gone without talking to them.
Yeah, well, I believe it was week 7 for me, and week 7 wasn't a bad week. It was just first aid training, and here I am bawling like a baby, sitting in the hallway. What am I doing? And I used to say, if I get anything one more day, I'm not going back. I'm just done. But I made it through, so that was the good thing.
That
Yeah.
was the hump that you had to get over to make it through, the mental hump.
Yes, for sure.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that every single person who goes through basic has that day, whatever that day is, whenever it comes. I think they all
Yeah.
probably have it.
Yeah. No, it was a great experience for me. People say I'm crazy, but it's true.
So you've mentioned that you have two children, so Paige and Tyler,
Hmm.
both in their late 20s, and a 4-year-old grandson, and they are back in Manitoba. And you had shared with me that you love your job and that you are proud of the work that you get to do with the Canadian Armed Forces, and that you hope that it's making you a good example to your children and grandchildren. So tell us a little more about that. What makes you love your job and what makes you really feel proud of the work that you're doing?
Well, I listen, I just my job, I just think we're here as a team together. There's no I in team, right? So, and we just I don't know. I love going to work. I love talking to people. And then when I come home at nighttime, I have my fill sort through the day. My daughter right now, she's doing her medical administration course. And it's funny because she said, Mom, I want to, because she's going to be 29 at the end of the month. And she said, I just want to make Hunter proud of me.
That's your
And one,
grandson.
that's my grandson. And one thing I remember from being in basic training, she had wrote me a letter and it said, Mom, every day she said, I go to school and I tell people how proud I am of you, of what you're doing. And I'm
Oh,
like, that got me through. That got me through. Like, okay, I can do this. And I
yeah.
remember being in the pool in basic training and thinking, okay, I'm doing this for Tyler. Like, I want to make them proud to show
Mm.
them that I can do something bigger than, not that what I did before wasn't good, because I loved being a teacher's assistant. Yeah.
That's amazing. And now, when you are on an OUTCAN, and especially for you as a foreign liaison person, you're representing Canada in a different country. And how do you feel that that has impacted you in terms of being proud of the work that you're doing right now while you're in the United States?
Well, it's I never ever thought of it in a way that Tammy Kingston said to me one day. She said, "You guys are ambassadors over there for Canada." I never thought of it that way, but it does make you feel proud inside, especially when you love your job,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. We're here for everybody if we can help them, and that's what we do.
So let's give a little shout out here to your current boss, Lieutenant Colonel Harvey, down there with you in Ohio. I think that's important because in both the civilian and military worlds, it feels like we only hear about the bad bosses. So when people want to share, like you did with me, that they have a great boss, we should give them that chance. Just shout out to him. What makes him a good boss?
Oh, poor Lieutenant Colonel Harvey. When I came out here, he was absolutely patient from day one of our first phone call, because I can get a little chatty, especially if I'm nervous or just, chatty in general. He probably thought, what am I getting myself into? But,
So
you know,
let me interject right there for people who don't understand what she's talking about. So the process to go on an OUTCAN, there's a whole screening process that's involved. And part of that is that phone call that you have to have with the chain of command in the location where you're going to, the Canadian chain of command, where they sort of interview you, right? Find out, hey,
yeah.
is this person going to be suitable? So you were a little nervous talking to
Yeah,
him.
yeah. But I'm a very open person too, so I probably told him everything about my life in about like 20 minutes. But then once we got here, I'm very lucky, especially with this pandemic. I mean, he's very understanding, and he may get a random text from me when I'm having a bad day, and he's like, "Listen, Darlene, I'm here if you ever need me," and that's very important to me. So, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate that from him.
Good bosses make all the difference for a good posting.
You could have the worst job in the world, but if you have the great people, then it's okay.
That's right. And I have to say, we at MFSUS have heard so much great feedback from families on OutCan who have shared their appreciation for the Canadian chain of command that's at CDLS Washington and CFSU Colorado Springs for their leadership, direction, and support of the members and their families during this year, because it's been such a crazy year. So hosting town halls, having medical briefs, just giving us clear and as much information as they can. They have been awesome. So kudos to the entire Canadian chain of command operating out of the United States OUTCAN this year. They have been awesome. All right, let's maybe get you a little teary-eyed here, Darlene. How long has it been since you were able to see your kids and your grandson in person, face to face?
So I'm very lucky that being Canadian, they're going to let me back in anyway, which I know A lot of people in Canada probably don't like that. I just find it awful weird. But I got to see them in September. I did
Oh,
get
great.
it.
Wonderful.
It was Hunter's birthday, his fourth birthday. I haven't missed one yet. And my daughter, like, she calls me every day. So this Christmas, I thought, with the quarantine and all this stuff, I'm not going to go home. It's just really a pain. Paige calls me every day on FaceTime, sometimes 4 times a day. And that I'll tell you, it's very important too. But one day she says to me, Mom, I don't need any Christmas presents whatsoever. I just want you here. I need you here. And I'm like, okay. And then she sends me a picture of Hunter with on his shirt that says, please, all the way down.
Oh,
And I'm
that'll
like,
break your heart.
and then my boss, Lieutenant Colonel Harvey, he said, Darlene, you need to go. It's hard here right now. So yesterday just booked a flight for the 18th. So I'm going to get to see them. Paige and I will, she said, Christmas is not canceled in my house. We will just quarantine together. And it's minus 30 out there anyway. So I don't go outside.
Yeah. So everybody's just going to stay inside,
Yeah,
quarantine,
we're fine.
and get your
And
love on.
and then I'm there for 3 weeks. So then it's, you have that extra time. Safety rules everywhere.
Yeah.
You just follow them, especially if you want to see your grandson.
Yeah, that's so true. Just do what you
Yeah.
have to do to see the people you love.
Yeah, yeah. But it is hard. And I can't imagine for the people that haven't been back home.
So when I had asked you what your biggest challenge has been as a single member while on OUTCAN, you mentioned the loneliness that you have felt, which I think would be a common response in a normal year for a single member on OUTCAN. But you're on an OUTCAN during COVID, where during
Yeah.
this time, it wasn't just that you couldn't see your family for months at a time, but now up until September, you were told you couldn't even cross the border into your home country for months. All of your normal activities, gatherings, and outings got canceled. Your volunteering, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit, was canceled for a time. You describe yourself as a very extroverted personality. What were you feeling and experiencing over the last 11 months as little by little different aspects of your life were being shut down, closed off, canceled? The first month you might have felt a certain way, but then slowly it just kept going and going. So what was happening in your life as a single person there?
Well, for me, I need some people in my life. So the first couple of months of COVID, it was very hard because nobody knew what to do. Really, no, there was unknowns everywhere. So
And you're in a different country and they're
I'm in
handling it different from Canada's
yeah.
handling of it. And
So, and not seeing people was a big thing for me. So it's funny. So I started reaching out to people I haven't heard from in probably 10 or 15 years down home. I like just randomly get on my FaceTime and hit, and they're like, oh my, what's going on? Yeah.
so you're feeling disconnected. So you're just reaching for whatever connections you can
Yeah.
find.
I'm a hugger, and my old boss, MWO Eileen Robson, she was a mentor of mine through the military. She messaged me and said, Darlene, no hugging anybody. And that's a big, when you're a hugger, this is hard when you're not even supposed to shake a hand. So it's hard.
So you got about 3 months in. How were you feeling at that point? Like, what was going on inside of you?
What is going on, and how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get through this? I'm coming to this posting. It's a beautiful place. You're supposed to go see things, and that's the purpose, and we can't do anything. And if this goes on for a year and a half or a year, what am I going to do? I didn't know. I thought I'd be going into a depression. And that's when my poor boss, I'd be like calling him, and he'd be like, we're here together, Darlene. I know, it's because it's not just Darlene that's feeling like this. It's the whole world. So
That's right.
Yeah. But
so you had mentioned there that one of the benefits of going on an OUTCAN, whether it's to the United States or Europe or somewhere else around the globe, is you're being told, hey, you get to go on this adventure to another country where you get to go out and explore and see the world that's there in the country you're going to. That got shut down right quick with COVID, where now all of a sudden you can't really go out and explore the same way, and you can't get into the community the same way and build new connections quite the same way. So that's a very good point that I hadn't really thought about yet, but that would impact you.
and
That's part of why you go.
Because within our international community, we do the balls and just everything to get all the countries together, and everything's just been
Yeah.
canceled everywhere. And those are things that we organize and do. And I love doing that stuff and helping out. So it's like, wow, it's just like taking a big junk out of you. It's very
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. It's just such a different experience this year. Just
Mm.
even more so than a normal year of loneliness for, I think, a single member who's on OUTCAN. One of the things that you started before the pandemic hit, but you have been able to find a way to continue since. Let's talk about your volunteering. So, first, why do you feel it's important, not just as a human, but specifically as a single member on OUTCAN, to get involved with some sort of voluntary activity?
Well, to give back, gives you a sense of accomplishment for yourself. I believe it's very important. When I first came out here for the House of Bread, they had a couple of nice baskets made up, and they were selling raffle tickets and stuff. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm in. Let's do barbecues. Let's get all that going.
And House of Bread, what do they do? What's their purpose?
So the House of Bread, they feed the homeless or anybody in need 365 days a year. It's hard work. We've volunteered. My boss and I have went in and volunteered, and he don't like doing the dishes. I mean, they keep him going, and the lady in there is like, "No, you're not done yet." So it was good. But after doing the raffle for last year and getting that done, I thought this year we can't sell tickets, so let's reach out to the community, which I did. And it was so amazing because everybody stepped up and they brought me into work warm clothes and food and money donations that we were able to take in $1,500 for the House of Bread this year. I just continued. Once I seen what they were doing, I'd go in and I would volunteer once a month, but then they shut down their volunteers
Because of
once we
COVID.
because of COVID. So it's only their staff. Believe it's 6 members that are feeding 250 to 300 people a day. So it's pretty
Wow.
important to help
Yeah.
where you can. And they're very appreciative. I go out with the food bank every couple weeks that I can. And last night I did a phone-a-thon for them. We raised 12 of us were taking phone calls. It was like it was $7,700, and I gotta say it was
That's
the
amazing.
funnest. It was the funnest thing. And there was people. One fella knew I was Canadian, and he says, "Can you please say A?"
Well, and you're an East Coaster, so we know you like to talk, right?
Right? You can tell. And then in my heart, like a couple older ladies were on there and they just didn't want to get off the phone. And
Oh,
because they're lonely and they're telling me that,
yeah.
that their families have never used this. So this is very important right now for families or just for people that are more fortunate than the less fortunate to help. I
Wow,
believe that.
boy,
That's my thought.
that's the time we're living in though right now. I think in general, older people are looking for those continued connections in community, but I think right now when they've had to become so isolated because of COVID,
Mhm.
I imagine that they really loved getting to talk with you on the phone last night.
Yeah, and it's funny because they see you on the live feed and they're like, "Are you the one with the Santa hat?" And I was waving. We were talking back, but yeah,
Oh,
it was
that's so
funny.
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, how cool that must have been for them and for you. And so, why did you choose that type of volunteering? I mean, there's so many things that you can choose to do as a human.
Yeah,
You can work with animals, you can work with people,
yeah.
so many things. What about that specific type of volunteering really called to you as a person?
Well, when I was back in Halifax, I was actually volunteering at a barn because I think it's because animals sort of help with loneliness, right?
Yeah.
So then I got sent off to Ukraine, came back, and then I got posted here. I tried to get my name in to go to a barn. I thought that's what I would do again. And this sort of just fell in my lap because I think more so of coming in, and that's what they started. And then I went and volunteered with the House of Bread, and then it just continued on.
So you
And I
found
like,
you went and you found that it was
yeah,
impacting you and
absolutely. You see some of those little kids that need a meal or something, and
Mhm.
and the people that come through and say, "Thank you very much, and have a blessed day," and you're doing one. It just you give back. That's all.
Yeah. Now, do
Yeah.
you have maybe one story that you can share that that stood out from all the rest that really touched you during your time of volunteering, that made you feel like all the hours you'd put in was really worth it?
I just think the thank yous that you get when you're putting food in the back of their trucks,
Mm.
and they do appreciate it, and we are there for a reason. And again, last night probably was one of them, when you get
Mm.
the older people on there and you're talking to them and they need somebody to talk to. Well, hey, okay, I probably should be off the phone 5 minutes earlier, but that's okay.
I think what's cool about that too with the telethon is that the people who are calling in and donating are people who are in need too. But
Yeah,
that's the
it's
time we're
true.
living in where we all, no matter what our situations are, right? No matter if we're doing well, not doing well, it's
Hmm.
finding ways to give, even if it's just a couple of dollars here or a smile there, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, I mean, here you've got old people who are, they're in need right now, but they're calling in and saying, I'm going to donate. I'm going to give back to, to other families. And so that's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's got to feel amazing.
Yeah.
So, as a single member in the States, unable to go home due to COVID for holidays or special occasions, although you just booked your trip, but
But the
what
thing
would,
of it is, with that, normally I am a person to, like, throughout the year, I was going back home whenever you want to go. But now I have no choice. I would jump on a plane and go back to Canada or down to Nova Scotia because I have nieces still down there and family. So it's
it's restricted, highly, highly
yeah,
restricted.
yeah.
So,
So
you had mentioned your daughter and you talk every single day. What else are you doing with your family members to stay connected? Anything special?
well, just Paige and I, Paige 4 to 5 times a day. She FaceTimes me and we talk. My son, I get don't hear from her for a few days. I'm like, hey, Ty, where are you? And then he's the quiet one, I think. But they're my only family. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome, though. Isn't it amazing that we live in a time, though, where we have that option? Think about when you first had your little ones in the 90s. I know for those of you listening who are a little bit younger, you may not remember the time before email, even, but early 90s, I didn't even have an email account yet, didn't even know what it was. And,
Yeah.
imagine going through the world that we're going through right now
With that
back
technology.
then without being able to do this, without being able to hear each other's voices, have Zoom meetings,
Yeah.
FaceTime, just any of that kind of thing, see pictures of our
Hmm.
grandchildren and our children from far away. Can you imagine how much harder this would have been
I
without
can't
that?
imagine. I'd be
Do you
on the
even
next
remember
plane
what it
back.
was? Yeah.
I'd be on the next plane back for sure. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, now I feel a little bit old mentioning that I know what it was like to not have an email. But so this year you sent some Christmas cards out to a program called Any Canadian Soldier to say Merry Christmas.
Hmm.
And you said that you actually gave them your name and said, if you need to reach out, find me on Facebook, find me on the work email. I'll be here for you. Why do you think those types of reaching out to other military members is so important?
Well, I've been on tour 2 times, but over in a couple taps, and everybody likes to get a letter. So if you can put a little smile on somebody's face just for a few seconds, and if they are having a hard time, always there. Just reach out. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they think she's some crazy warrant officer down in Dayton, Ohio. But but I'm there if they want to, and just reach out and talk.
So you do it because you feel like when you've been out there in the world, it would have been impactful to you to receive something like that, even if you didn't take advantage of it, right? Even if you
Yeah,
didn't pick up the phone and call or send an email,
I
it's
just
just
feel
being told
today.
that.
I feel today that we do have too much texting, too much this, too much that. Sometimes when you have a personal note, it's just more meaningful, and letters are along the wayside. So maybe I am like a little dinosaur. So yeah, I just feel everybody likes to get letters, even though we don't do it as much anymore. And it just, if you can make somebody's day, why not?
When you're far from home, it's nice to have something tangible to hold in your hands, and
Yeah,
just it makes you feel connected.
yeah, yeah.
You've also said that you feel like the military is one big family. And I always think that about Canadian military. It seems like no matter who we're talking to, we know somebody who knows somebody who's from somewhere that we've been to.
Very
It's a
true.
lot different. The US military is significantly larger. There's single bases in the United States that have the same number of troops as the entire Canadian Armed Forces. So it's not quite that smaller field that the Canadian military gets to enjoy. As a single member far from home, what would you say to someone, or maybe to a family who wants to support a single member in their location? How can they do that in a way that would be meaningful and tangible?
Well, just over the holidays, invite them over for supper or dinner. Doesn't even have to be at the holidays. Just say your door's always open if you need anything, because it is easier for people, especially out here. There's people that have their families that they can go home to and talk to and stuff. You come home and it's like, because I've had a couple people out here that will say, "Hey, Darlene, come on over for supper." And that's all it takes for the day to make my day better when I'm having a bad day, because I do have them. I try not to let people know I have them, but I do have them. And I've learned, I guess, over the years that sometimes you do have to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. Which brings me to, what are you doing to protect your mental health during these times?
For a while, I get out walking, just go walking 2-3 times a day. I'm learning to reach out if I do have a bad day to my boss. He's one of my go-tos. I have a couple friends out here that if they don't hear from me in a couple days, they're calling.
Right.
Yeah. Or Paige, my daughter. So what's going on, Mom? So you just, I don't know.
I think as a single person, the idea that there's someone out there who, if they don't hear from you in a couple of days, are going to reach out to you. How that is so important, to have at least one person in your life who does that for you.
I have friends overseas right now that are in the same, and they will reach out. Darlene, how's your day going? And
yeah,
if it wasn't for those friends, it's good to have them.
You just want to know that there's someone out there who's thinking about you and gonna make sure that you're still okay.
Yeah.
And I know as a military spouse, I'm in a different country. Living in Canada is a different country for me. So all my family's far away. And I always said, the biggest challenge mentally when my husband would go on deployment or would be gone for, trainings for a long time or whatever, was the idea that because I work from home and we live sort of out in the country, is that something could happen to me and no one would know.
That's,
right?
you know what, it's funny you say that, because it's so true. Because I was married for a long time and I got my kids and stuff, and all of a sudden this goes on in your life and everything's up in a turmoil, and then you're sitting in the chair one day thinking, oh my heavens, what if something happened right now? Would anybody even know?
Yeah. I always joked
Yeah.
my husband would come home and my animals would have probably had to eat me, not to be morbid, but
somebody please check in. But yeah, so you appreciate the ones that do.
That's right. And that's the point, right? Is that if someone's listening today and you're saying, how can I support someone like this who's on their own? And it's not just the young soldiers and sailors that need those check-ins. They do need them. But we do have older single members who, even though you're an established, strong, independent woman, those check-ins are important. So if you're listening, check in with people. Just reach out and just say, hey, how you doing? Just wanting to know you're being thought about. That, just hearing those words. Yeah. But also, if you do know that someone's on their own, especially during the holiday season, and it's not restricted, definitely invite them over for a holiday meal. Just feed their bellies, because feeding those bellies feeds their soul. So
that we have done that too as well here. So for July 1st, we were on sort of a restriction, but 10 people or less. So I thought July 1st, well, let's have a little July 1st party. So that's what we did out in the backyard, had the flag, everything, to show the other countries what Canada's about. Yeah. And made the moose milk for them, and they just loved it. And,
I'm sure they loved the moose milk. This is how we represent Canada to the world, is through moose milk.
They didn't love me the next day, I don't think, but they had fun. So yeah, that's what Canada's about too, because we are friendly people over there. So
And in turn, even though we are asking people, reach out to your single member, if there was a military member, especially a single member listening to this podcast today, who was struggling with their mental well-being and they're maybe a little bit hesitant to reach out, what would you say to them today?
Just do it. Just do it. Sometimes your pride takes over, because a lot of people over the years, they would come to me because they would think I would be the strong one. But sometimes strength is tiring, and you need to reach out. You just do it. We're good people in our heart, right? So if you don't, we don't know.
Yeah, if we don't hear from you, we don't always know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think if people are brave enough to say I need help, and you also have that other side of people checking in on a regular basis, I think the combination of those two can really help build that security of
Because
mental health.
with mental health, my sister, she passed away of mental health, and people don't realize it because it's invisible. So you don't know what's going on in their mind. They could look physically okay, and people will think, oh, there's nothing wrong, but there could be. So just ask somebody if they're okay. How's your day going? Smile. Well, under your mask.
We can see the smile in the eyes,
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah. You might make somebody's day just saying, how's your day?
That's right. So you said, it sounds like you've gone on a couple deployments. You've been on now OUTCAN. For you, what has been your greatest feeling about being a Canadian Armed Forces member? Like, what would you say if people were listening, like, do I want to join the military? And what about all these weird postings you go on? Like, just talk about how that has impacted you, getting to do these different things and go to these different places and do it as a woman who's a little bit older.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've went to schools and stuff, and kids that are graduating today, I always, because I've taught for CFLTC 3 years in a row to reservists, and I tell people, especially if you're young, listen, if you're graduating, join the military. Give it 3 years, because you have a family here. And I believe that wholeheartedly. You do. Try for 3 years. Chances are you're going to stay in. There's security. They look after you. If something goes on, they're there. I have so many mentors in the military, and this is coming from somebody that got in the military when she's 36 years old.
Yeah.
So I had my mentors back before was my father. So proud of him. He's my hero. But you have that circle of everybody now. When I went through my separation or whatever, I had people to reach out to. You need that circle. We are here.
Did you find these different places that you've gotten to go because of your military life? I mean, that just seems very adventurous too. What have you thought about all these trips that you've been able to do?
I enjoyed the camp. I went to Camp Mirage in Dubai in 2010. I still have people that I talked to from that tour and am very good friends with. Since I get in basic training, you always have friends for life in the military. If that's one thing of getting in the military, you're going to have friends everywhere. I loved there. I worked hard, and it was hot, but I think the biggest thing there for me was I worked hard and I was doing something for our country. And
that's a rewarding experience.
Yeah, it was. If it sounds a little weird, but it's true. Yeah.
I think that's a good point you just made too, is you're not just exploring the world on your own. You're getting to explore it with your coworkers who become your friends. You're meeting people in other countries who then become your friends. And
yeah, my roommate from 2010 in Camp Mirage, she just went overseas, and we were just talking, and I got a message. I wish I had my roommate with me.
Oh,
there's good people out there, and it's awesome.
So true. So a little bit of a sad subject, but it turns into something good. You lost both of your parents and your sister in a very short period of time. And I also lost both of my parents earlier in life. And it really does have a profound impact on a person. I think there's something about you become the next generation then. When they're gone, you're the adult in the room now, and it's impactful.
Well, it is. It was like a little game of Survivor, it seemed, for me, because I lost my father of pancreatic cancer. 3 months later, my
Which
mom.
Is fast.
Yeah, that was fast. My mom, COPD, 3 months later, and then my sister 3 years later, I believe, of mental illness. So I'm like, what is going on? So when all this is going on, your life changes in different avenues and stuff too. In the midst of mom and dad, I was moving to Edmonton from Shearwater. So it's like, what is going on? Can I do this? But my MWO, she was like, you got this. You got this, girl. That's what she would say.
That's that family. That's that military family coming around you when you need them. But that really touched me because I like to ask each of our guests if they have a mantra that they try to live by. And you had said that yours sort of came into being in your life by trying to follow the path and the example that your dad had set as a person. And so your mantra was and is expect nothing, appreciate everything, be kind. Tell us how you came to that and from your father's example. And then how do you apply those words to your life? How are they helping you navigate your military career, your family life, and being so far from home right now?
I think you try to treat everybody like you would want to be treated. My dad was probably one of the kindest people you'll ever find on this earth. Yeah, he was my hero. When I was over in Camp Mirage, I got a little award for something, and I called him and I said, you know, Dad, I said, I have this because of you. You taught me who I am today. He says, oh, Darlene, he says, I think your mom had something to do with it. But he was a person that if he had $20 in his pocket and you needed it, he would give it to you. It's who he was. He was kind. Through my military career, I've always treated people with kindness. I would never do anything, ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do with them beside them. So I really do think it's very important to be kind, and especially today. You watch some of the news and stuff. I don't think they're taking their advice because they need to be more kind.
And I think that, as you said, expecting nothing but appreciating everything. It's easier to be kind when you approach life with the attitude of, I appreciate my life and I appreciate your life. And it sounds like your dad just did an amazing job of teaching you that, because look at the work that you're doing, trying to show that kindness. Your dad may be gone, but you are extending his kindness, not just in Canada and not just to your family.
He volunteered all the time too.
That's right.
That's where I get the little seed going from me.
Yes, you are carrying your father's kindness, that seed of kindness, with you into other countries now too. What a legacy for you to be able to, when your life is said and done, that you carried on that kindness legacy. That's amazing. And people can't see us right now, but both Darlene and I are getting a little teary. Because, our parents, it's an impactful thing.
My kids, hopefully they do this, like they're there for everybody. If their door's always open to people, if in need. So hopefully if there's one thing can pass on to them is that.
Let's teach each other kindness, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. If you are a CAF member or CAF family member listening to this podcast and you feel like you need to look into some additional supports for your mental health and well-being, check out the mental health pages that are full of supports at cafconnection.ca. Also, you can contact the bilingual and confidential family information line, staffed with counselors 24/7 at 1-800-866-4546. Remember, you are not alone. Darlene, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience. Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for sharing your experiences, your struggles, your volunteer work, which I just think is amazing. You are volunteering for people, my people, back in Ohio. And so I just feel extra touched by getting to talk with you today. Thank you for being a person who is looking to appreciate everything and spread kindness in your life. I believe that people listening today are going to feel encouraged to go out and be more kind by listening to you. So thank you for being an amazing voice of OUTCAN. Thank you for listening to the Voices of OUTCAN podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to hear when new episodes are released and share with other military families and their supporters. Check out our Voices of OUTCAN podcast information and all of the other resources and supports offered by MFSUS on our CAF Connection web pages at cafconnection.ca/United States. To all of our Canadian military members and your families, we thank you for your service.